All right, I'm with Cullman County Coroner Jeremy Kilpatrick. Jeremy, we just reached the 30-person mark in suicides in Cullman County. If I'm not mistaken, that's double what happened in 2016. Is that about right?
Yes, sir. In 2016, we had 17 suicides from January 1 to December 31st. And right now we're at 30, and we still got a month and a half to go in the year.
Now, you have to be involved in every suicide that happens and other deaths around the county. Do you have any thought on what to attribute this to? I mean, near doubling or doubling that's not an anomaly. That's a trend. What do you think that's about?
It could be a lack of adequate mental health care in the area or throughout the state. People self-medicating with prescription and illegal drugs, and people not having appropriate coping skills these days.
So, Sheriff, there's not much you can do in the law enforcement business to prevent suicides, but you get called on suicide calls, attempted suicide calls, mentally unstable. Tell us your perspective.
Well, you know, one of the things in law enforcement we deal with is people when they have problems. We have various ways that we do it, and like you said, you can't prevent some things, but we have something now as a victim service deputy, and Captain Potter is a great guy. We work with families and potential victims to suicide. We work with Judge Tammy Brown trying to get people the mental help they need when they're in that low state in their life where they're thinking about committing suicide or having problems. And that's one of our main goals in law enforcement, is to make sure we take care of the community, whether it's on the law enforcement end or getting people treatment and help for mental issues.
Jeez. You've been fairly vocal and active recently in trying to get some funding, trying to motivate legislators, elected officials, and the public to get behind funding some mental health around the state. Tell us about your thoughts on that.
Well, as I said a couple of weeks ago, if the state legislators and senators could find a little bit of money to put back towards mental health, and people start trying to seek help, that would probably cut down on a lot of this illegal drug usage, and also in turn cut down on some of the petty theft crimes where people are breaking into houses just to get stuff to support their drug habit.
And when those break-ins happen, you can sometimes have violence that comes from that if the occupant's in the house or stumbles upon them while they're in there. When there is a suicide, you're typically called out, whether you know it's a suicide at the time or not, you're called out. What's the process that your office goes through when that happens?
Well, even if it is a suicide, we conduct it just like we would a regular homicide or any other investigation. We investigate it fully.
Those all seem like answers and solutions, and you're the person who has to go out and literally, physically gather up the deceased. But that's only half your job, and I don't think people recognize the fact that if someone commits suicide, you're the person that often gets to go and talk to that person's family, friends. That's got to be an incredibly difficult job.
It can be difficult, telling someone that their loved one has passed away because they took their own life, and the family members, they'll lash out at themselves, other family members. I've been the brunt end of many of those lashings out numerous times.
Oh, and it's not your fault, but you just happen to be the messenger, and sometimes the messenger gets it.
Yes, sir.
When you talk to the families of the victims, the people who've taken their own life, what can you say, whether they're lashing out at you or not? I mean, there's probably no words that can comfort these people, really, is there?
No, sir. There's nothing that I really can say to the family that helps them at that immediate time. It just takes time for them to go to grieve and cope before they may come to terms with what happened.
Now, I talked with Mikey Cates, who's a friend of mine, and I think you know him reasonably well. And he was very open about what he did and how he did it, and his battle with depression and mental illness and getting past it. Suicide is not something I typically cover on Cullman Today. In other words, I'm not going to go out and cover a suicide as I would a murder or a car wreck or some news report. There's lots of reasons for that, but you're big on keeping it quiet as far as the circumstances, and you have a reason for that. So would you like to explain it?
Well, the reason why I don't like to go into how somebody done it is because, if I say X amount of deaths were caused by this, X amount of deaths were caused by that, somebody may think, I want to do this. The coroner says this has been done. I want to take my life a different way. Or be like, that sounds like, I've thought about it, but the coroner mentioned this, or the paper mentioned this. Well, that sounds like a good way to do it. I don't like to give the people that are contemplating suicides a plan to do it. And I feel that way of saying breaking it down as to the manners of suicide, that it would give them a plan of how to take their own life.
Well, I think I know where you're ultimately getting with that is some people who might be suicidal or unstable in some way, they see somebody else do it and they go, I guess I can do it too. And that's part of the reason that we don't want to over-publicize these things. But we have to talk about it because they're double now this year over last year, and the trend looks like it's going to continue on like this. So we got to talk about it in some form, so that's what we're doing, right?
Yes, sir.
Coroner, I appreciate you talking to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.